All right, so I'm hoping that I'm live now. Can you all see me? Can you hear me okay? Just let me know in the nice little chat there if you can hear me and if you can hear the music and making sure that the music is not too loud. You can hear it in the background. Thank you very much. Welcome, you guys. I am so excited and actually also a little nervous to be here today. This is my first official, like, regularly sized stream today. And so I want to just say welcome to everyone that's here. Um, I just want to ask your patience with me and my daughter. It's me, Resh, who is helping me mod today. We really have no idea what we're doing. So be patient with us. I think that I've scheduled some things in there that'll come out, that'll come up on its own. And then we have a few commands. So just be patient. We'll get it done. We'll get it done. All right. Everyone can hear me. And I just want to say hi to everyone that's in the room that's already come in chatting. I tell you, the support from the women of Twitch that I found in these Twitch streets is just phenomenal. Dr. Dady Priest was one of the first people that in the podcast arena that I started following, and she literally just introduced me to everyone else that I've known, whether it is Spiritual Thought Leader, the Rebel Inc., who's here. Thank you so much for being here. And hey, real quick, Rebel, you and I have a story that we share. I've known Vader for so many years, way before Twitch ever happened. I'm a retired firefighter for the city of Minneapolis, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's how I met Vader the first time I ever met Vader. So I feel like, oh my gosh, he's going to have to remind me how long it's been. But we're getting up to 20 years that we've known each other. So I learned about Twitch through him, just coming on, listening to him DJ. And then I found other DJs through him. And then, just chatting with people. I found Dr. Dady Priest and then Spiritual Thought Leader and Rebel Inc. I think I really found you in Vader's chat. And then like everything else has just grown from there. And BTD Mom is here. And I've getting to know her because of Spiritual Thought Leader. They are blood sisters, we are learning. And Spiritual Thought Leader is my pastor, by the way. If you are not following any of these ladies, the Rebel Inc., Crazy Berry Town, Kim Possible, just so many people that have reached out and just embraced me in these Twitch streets. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you. I appreciate you more than you will ever know. Oh, and by the way, I do cry a lot. I don't know if I said that in my first stream. So you'll find me choking up and I'll have to take a breath to make sure that the tears don't flow. I blame it on menopause. If you guys, anyone out there understand the position that I'm in, then you understand how menopause can just grab you and do some things that you never thought. I cry on the weirdest commercials and just every little thing. But anyways, thank you again for being here. And I just want to make sure that I'm seeing everyone that's in there. I'm learning so much from you all, how you engage with your audience. And I want to make sure that I'm doing the same thing. So I hope I didn't miss anyone that was in the chat. Let me just go back because I'm learning. And then I'm also learning that I can't expect perfection right now, even though I do kind of like being perfect. It's a Virgo thing. It's the Virgo in me. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So I think that what I wanted to initially do was introduce myself to everyone. I feel like I'm so far behind with Twitch because I'm just getting to know everyone. I've only been following Vader for about 6 months, and then everyone has just been after that. So the fact that I've been able to be this newbie around here, and y'all are still so nice and nice to me, I tell you, it means so much to me. But because of that, I feel like let's start to have a conversation a little bit about myself before we start talking about what this show is about. And so let me just say, Dr. Dady Priest, I don't know if you're here yet, but I have not nailed down my mission statement. I know that's important. I want to make sure that I'm thinking through what I want people to learn and grow from this show, but I do want to have that mission statement nailed down by next week. I'm working on it because the podcast is really going to talk about a lot of factors that contribute to inequality, education, politics, incarceration, home ownership, economics, and so much more. We will work to just go a step further, offering ways that we can advocate and work together towards a society where all of us are being and doing better. We all understand there are issues that separate us, but then what? How can we make a change, and what does making a change even, look like? Uh, so that's kind of what the show is going to be. Dr. Dady, I have no idea how I'm going to put that into a mission statement, but I am working on it. So as far as this particular episode, like I said, I'm going to tell you all about me, kind of how I was molded, how I became passionate about inequality, advocating for poor people. Yeah. And first, there isn't even a good word that we use: poor, lower class, second class. I want a new word that isn't poor, poverty, and still has that, still hits the nail on the head. But maybe we can come we can come to that conclusion together. All right. I just want to look here to make sure I'm talking to everyone that's here. I have to look over here because StreamYards is so weird. I got to have this up here because I'm actually also streaming on YouTube at the same time, trying to see if I can do both of these. And between this podcast and the one that I have with my daughter, I'm just learning so much and trying to figure out how to, there's definitely separate kind of beasts, so to speak, but I'm trying to figure out how to make them both just so. All right. But anyways, back to this particular podcast. Then we're going to talk about inequality, about why there are concentrations of poverty in Americans' urban and Black communities. We're going to figure out how we can navigate through some of the questions of how we have generations of working poor families in this country. And it doesn't have to be. We'll focus attention on education disparities, imbalances in the justice system, the bottom line mentality in capitalism, access to the political system, lack of community ownership. Like, we are going to dig into a lot of things today in this conversation, but really just kind of skimming the surface, because when we come back next week, we'll get deeper and deeper into each topic. All right. So that's kind of how the show is going to go. Each episode is going to go. And now let's go ahead and start talking about me. I tell you, being vulnerable is new for me. I'm being as honest as I can and transparent with you so that you can get to know me. Vulnerability, not an easy thing for me, not with my kids. Ask my daughter, she'll tell you, being vulnerable has never been a muscle that I've exercised, but I'm exercising that every day. So the fact that I'm talking to you right now about myself, whew. All right, so here we go. So I'm 51 years old. 51. I have 2 kids, a beautiful daughter who's on here helping me mod right now. It's me, Rush. She's in her 30s. So my kids are old. My son just turned 31 last week. Crazy Berrytown, his birthday was March 15th. I wanted to say that, drop that in all of the chats that we were partying that day, but it was your day. But my son's birthday is March 15th. Very special. All right. So I was born in Chicago, but raised here. My mom and dad both kind of migrated. The families came from down south, like most Black folks who ended up north, right? My dad's side of the family is from Alabama. We still have lots of family down there. My mom's side of the family is from Mississippi. And I don't know much about my mom's side of the family that could still be down there. I don't know. But they both migrated up to the Chicago area. My mom's family ended up settling in Robbins, and my dad's family ended up settling in Chicago. I always hear the stories about how they moved from Kentucky to Cabrini Greens. That's where my dad, lived a lot of his childhood. But my dad's from a family of 11, my mom from a family of 6. So our family is big. Our family is really big. But our roots are in Alabama, Mississippi, and in Illinois. So I got to Arizona, which is where I am now, because my dad loved cowboy movies, westerns. He loved westerns. And let me just make sure. Let me just make sure. I'm trying to make sure that I'm staying engaged with you guys too. But my dad loved westerns. That's how we ended up out here. My parents were very young when they got married and when they had me. My mom was 16. My dad was 19 when I was born, and when they got married. They got married before I was born. You ask my mother and my father, and they will tell you that that's not why they got married. Wink, wink. Anyways, they were young parents, married young. My dad wanted to get out of Chicago, and he left me and my mom there, and moved out here to Phoenix with his older brother, Uncle Jimmy, who is just so near and dear to my heart. But that's how we ended up getting to Arizona. My mom and I, we decided to follow him here. And we set up roots here. But when we first got here, when my parents were young, they were, not very stable, and they partied a lot. My parents were partiers. They would break up, they'd get back together, they'd break up, they'd get back together. And so that's kind of how my childhood was. It's funny, I was thinking about this week and was like, you know what? We were kind of like the Rugrats. Do you remember the Rugrats? And I would always tease my kids because they were never allowed to watch the Rugrats. Like, those kids were always on their own, doing whatever they wanted to do. They never suffered any consequences. The parents were never there. And so when I was thinking about this little part yesterday, I was like, oh yeah, I feel like we were kind of like Rugrats. That's kind of how we were. And that's really the early days in Phoenix, but there weren't very many Black people. I feel like all the parents, the families that were there that my parents knew were all the Black people in Phoenix at the time. So there was really no urban Black community here. I never saw us as being poor or living in poverty, which is a funny thing. Most people who are poor and live in poverty, that's not how they see themselves. But I didn't see myself as that here. There were no communities, no Black community here. We had a lot of Hispanic, Mexican communities, but not Black ones. So being able to see that in yourself was not an option for me growing up here. But I know we were poor because, like I said, my parents would break up, they'd get back together. And because they both wanted responsibility for me, that was me. I was with my mom, then I go to my dad, then I go back to my mom, then I go back to my dad. And my mom was pretty, she was pretty stable. Like I don't remember too many things popping up when I was living with my mom. But with my dad, it was common to come home and there'd be no electricity on, and we just have to open up a can of beans and eat them right out the can. My dad was more into, he was into other things in his youth, and being super responsible was not one of them. So my life had a little bit of an up and down as I was growing up. But then my mom got saved and my mother got saved, and life began to shift a lot then. After I got into the 6th grade, that was the last time that my parents separated. So, did I also mention that I'm an only child? I don't know if you noticed that I've not mentioned a brother or sister in all of this, but I am an only child as well. So I pretty much lived my life alone. Being an only child, that's a whole nother story. Probably something that we'll talk about on my mother-daughter podcast with It's Me, Resh. But after I got into the 6th grade, that was the last time that my parents separated. My mom's got saved. Things started to shift a little bit. I mean, because my dad was not ready. He was not ready to be saved. He was still doing his thing. Like, I don't want to give too much, talk too much about my parents and what they did in the past. But hey, my dad partied and that's what he did. And he was not ready. As a matter of fact, this is a story, and I tell this all the time. My dad would get so drunk, he would pass out in the middle of the day, because you got to pass out and sleep it off so that you can wake up and get started again. So that was kind of how my dad was. And he was so drunk one day. My Uncle Jimmy and my Uncle Greg, put firecrackers in his shoe, lit the fire, lit them on fire. They popped, and my dad, he woke up because I mean, you got to wake up to that, right? But I'm telling you, he like woke up like, oh, what was that? Kind of patted his leg and then rolled over and went back to sleep. My dad was a partier. He was not ready to let that go. So once my mother got saved, there was some conflict within the house, but they did not give up, which is good. My dad, though, he did play Still On Down the Line by the Commodores a lot during this part of my life and this, period in my parents' marriage. But then my dad got arrested, right? He got arrested in Arizona. It's really easy to fit the description out here, right? Especially in the 70s when there weren't a lot of Black people anyway. So my dad was arrested because he fit the description. He was not guilty of anything. They could only hold him for whatever the whole time was, and they let him go. But I think that gave him a lot of opportunity to think, and I think it gave God the opportunity to move through his life, while he was sitting still in jail, probably like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And so after my dad got out of jail, then he got saved. And so once they both got saved, like, life totally changed for me. And being an only child, I feel like selfishness was was a part of me. So I'm like, oh my God, now we got to be in church all the time. I'm used to like hanging out, having fun. It went from that to 3 days, 4 days in church. Y'all know how it is. Prayer service. There were 3 services on Sunday. We had to have choir rehearsal. Like, we were in church all the time. That became our new party. And I didn't like it. I did not like it at all. But my parents loved it. They sang in the choir. My dad became a deacon. He was eventually ordained. My parents then began their own ministry. And then my mom got ordained. So life was church. And you know what they say about preacher's kids? I became a preacher's kid really, really fast. But thank goodness my dad believed in school, books, and he believed in running my life. So I had no choice in any matter when it came to school, or anything like that. As I've said to spiritual thought leader, I had to do my times tables 12 times each before I could even leave the house and think about getting in a pool or playing outside. Like, and I'm talking about 1 times 1 all the way to 12, 2 times 1 all the way to 12. And all of those 1 through 12, I had to do it 12 times before I left the house. So that's how my dad operated. He really believes, he really believed in school, going to school. And yes, it's me, Resh. Papa has been arrested. Please don't tell him that I told you, but you can feel free to ask, hey, Dad, Papa. But anyways, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm staying engaged with you guys, because Lord knows I can talk. Spiritual thought leader, I don't know how you talk for 2 hours. I never see you take a drink. I must hydrate. All right. I graduated high school at 16. But not because, I was a super smart kid. My mom just changed my birth certificate when I was 4. So being a single mom, she needed to work, and she was going back to school herself. So since I was kind of a bigger kid growing up and I was a little bit advanced, she decided she was going to change my birth certificate, because she put me in Head Start early. And, you just kind of go through Head Start. And then when it's time to go to kindergarten, they say it's time to go to kindergarten. So my mom changed my birth certificate. She fudged my birth certificate a little bit. So I was able to start school early. So that also meant I was done early, 16, and I went to college. I turned 17. My birthday's in September. So I wasn't 17 yet when I started college. I was still 16. Turned pretty soon after I got started. But community college is not a place for 17-year-olds. I think that if I had gone to, a regular university, things may have been a little bit different. But being in community college, everyone was way older than me. And that's where I met It's Me Rush's. I don't know. I always don't know what to call him, but he was really just a sperm donor. Once I found out I was pregnant, he was pretty much out of my life. But I was pregnant at 17. I met And then after I it was had my daughter, I was 18 by the time she came, thank goodness. Then I met my ex-husband, started having a family with him, got married, and the rest is history. And then after we got married, me and my ex-husband, we moved to Minneapolis, which is where his family is located. And his mother had just gotten sick. She had had a stroke. And so we went to take care of her. And that's how I got to Minneapolis. I'm trying to think, is there anything that I missed? I'm sure there's lots of, that I missed in my Arizona time, but Minneapolis is really the place that molded my passion for this subject. My first experience of really meeting and talking with someone that had no hope was in Minneapolis. And I'm telling you, the things that you don't think about every day that people are doing or going through, it's amazing. But I pull up to this gas station. So Minneapolis is kind of set. We got the north side and the south side. And then there's the northeast, but no one really goes over northeast if you're Black, because that's where all of it's across the river. And so you don't go northeast. It's just something that you didn't do when you were back in those days. It was a long time ago in the 90s. But I drove up to this gas station. Of course, the gas stations have the little convenience stores. And back then, credit cards, I don't remember being able to pay for gas with a credit card inside or outside. You always had to go inside. So I went inside because this guy, his music was so loud. Boom, boom. Like you could feel it. You can feel it. And these are things that I'm not used to coming from the desert, right? Not a lot of Black people, not a lot of banging music in cars. Like this just wasn't a thing. So it was new for me. So I went inside and the guy was standing at the counter paying for his gas and I don't know, getting some from the store. And so I'm just outgoing. I kind of talk to everybody. And I was like, wow, man, that's that your car out there? That's pretty good. That's a pretty good sound system you have. And, he was like, yeah, if he could just like go, yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do. That's kind of the attitude he had when he was saying thank you for acknowledging his really loud sound system. But I was really trying to be sarcastic, to be honest with you. I said, yeah, it really sounds good, but by the time you're 30, you're not going to be able to hear. Like, how are you going to be able to hear? That's got to be bothering you with your hearing. And he literally took a couple of beats, right? And he looked at me, he says, I don't plan on being alive when I'm 30. So he didn't care that his ears would not be working at 30 because he just didn't even see himself being here past that. It was so new. That was so new for me. And I still feel that. Like it still gets me, right? STL gets me in my shondo whenever I think about that guy. And I wonder if he made it past 30. I wonder sometimes, did he make it past 30? But maybe not. Maybe he did. Anyways, so I went to college when I got to Minnesota. And I went to North Hennepin Community College. I was the best student that you could possibly be. And I wanted to be the best student. It was so funny when I went back to college, I realized, hey, I like school. I didn't realize that because, you kind of grow up and school is something that you just have to do. Even when I went to college the first time at 17, I really just got my degree in spades because we were in the Black Student Union playing spades all the time. And at 16, 17 years old, that's really all I wanted to do. But when I went back to school, after I moved to Minneapolis, went back to college, I learned that I really loved it. Got into politics there. I was the president of my student union. I got to travel all around the state of Minnesota speaking. I got a chance to go to Washington, D.C., do some lobbying with Congress there. That's where I met Paul Wellstone, who was a really big deal in Minnesota when I first got there. Paul Wellstone was the guy. But I also had, when I went to college, my political science teacher, her name was Professor Ann Winia, and she had just run for office to try to beat Paul Wellstone. and take his seat when I first got there. And so the fact that I was able to have her as my professor, I just felt so honored. And the one thing that she challenged the class with, and I'm going to challenge you guys with this as well, she said, okay, raise your hands if you think that we live in a democracy. And of course, everyone raised their hand because we're taught all of our lives that this is a democratic country. And that's how we believe, that's how we operate, and that's what we know. And so raise your hand if you think we're a democratic country still. Let me know. But she says that she told us you're all wrong. You're all wrong. We will never live in a democratic society until every single person that can vote does vote. If we don't all have a say so in how this country is ran, it's not a democracy. It's not democratic. And I tell you, that just blew my mind. You know, if I had that emote, my mind was blown. My mind was blown, and political science had me by the balls right then. And so I'm so into politics and all that stuff. And it just started with that guy at the gas station. Everything just kind of started right there. So I went to school to be I wanted to be a lawyer. That was my goal. So I got my associate science degree as a paralegal and went to work for one of the top law firms in Minneapolis. At the time, while I was still in school, I was a receptionist because I believe in getting your foot in the door, the way that you can get your foot in the door, and then then you just kind of blow it open and hey, I'm here, and you know me a little bit already. So then it's always easier. So I was a receptionist, but once I graduated and got my degree to be a paralegal, I became a paralegal for one of the partners at the law firm. One of the first things that I did as a paralegal was work on the lawsuit. The NAACP sued this. Let me get this out right. The NAACP sued the Minneapolis public school system, MPS, because of the disparities in their testing. There's a lot of lawsuits in Minneapolis, racial lawsuits, discriminatory lawsuits, a lot of that going on when I first moved there. So I really got involved. And being that I was a paralegal on this lawsuit, I had to go around with both parties to all the schools in Minneapolis that had really bad testing scores. And so I remember going to a lot of these classes. There are fifth grade classes. I go to a fifth grade reading class. I go to a fifth grade math class. And they would always tell me, all right, this is the fifth grade math class, but no one in here is actually testing past third grade or second grade. So their skills and knowledge and abilities were at second, third grade level, but they were still putting them through to fifth grade, sixth grade. So this was the basis of the lawsuit that the NAACP had against the city of Minneapolis and the public school system. And the attorney that I worked for was a Black attorney in Minneapolis, very, very popular. His name was Don Lewis. I love him. And him and I are still in contact today. But he was the attorney for the NAACP. So we were on that side. But I remember going through all these schools, and we had to go to all of them. This is a fifth grade class, but no one is operating or no one is testing up to this level. And that's when I learned that we were letting our kids go through life, go through school, not understanding what they should understand, but still just pushing them through, not caring. And so again, another piece of me, and I'm just, all these little pieces, all of these things are just molding my heart and my mind to understand, like, how is this possible? And these are all the people that look like me, right? These are the people that look like me. Anyways, I did that for a little while until I realized that I didn't want to be a lawyer. I had also gotten so deep into me while I was there, what I want to do. This is my plan. I need to go to school. I need to do this. I need to do that. It was all about me. And I was still married at the time. Even though we were getting to the point where we were getting ready to separate. Like, our marriage didn't last as long as we dated, to be honest with you. It didn't last very long at all. The marriage didn't last. But during that time, when we were kind of moving towards separation, there was a kind of a big a big thing that happened in my family, really close to me and my family, happened to my kids, and I learned about it. And it took that to kind of smack me up against my head. And it said, all right, see what's going on. You are just too into yourself now, that your kids, stuff's happening to your kids. Not only are you not seeing it, but they don't even feel comfortable enough to come and tell you about it. They had to tell my mom and my dad about some stuff that had been happening within the family. And it just floored me that I missed it all because I was just so wrapped up into myself. So that was another big change in my life. So I quit being a paralegal, walked away from that life, just blew everything up, didn't have the faintest idea what I was going to do. But I found myself being a DJ on the local radio station there called KMOJ, Crazy Bear Town. I don't know if you're here, but KMOJ is the connection that we had to Prince. And I know his music to you is not that great, and I'm going to forgive you for that. I'm okay with that. We're still going to be friends. But KMOJ had a connection to Prince and vice versa because he grew up. As a matter of fact, my in-laws, they all knew Prince Rogers Nelson. They didn't even call him Prince. They called him by his real name. But he did so much for the radio station that I worked at, bought equipment that we needed to make sure that we stayed on the air. Like Prince really, he meant something to the community in Minneapolis. So I just had to say that. Anyways, while I was working on the radio station, yes, I've done so many different things in my life. I used to think that was a detriment, or I used to think that meant something negative until I changed my perspective and understood how much knowledge that I gained in so many different ways and different areas. But anyways, while I was doing my show on the radio, the Minneapolis Fire Department was doing an engagement with the community because there was just another lawsuit. Black citizens and Black communities in Minneapolis sued because they were not passing the test. They were not being hired as firefighters. And so they sued. And with that lawsuit, because they did win, with that lawsuit meant that they had to go out into the Black community and be intentional about recruitment in the Black community. And it was on, I'm like just I'm the engineer on their show pretty much, making sure they get to the commercials, whatever, not really paying attention. And they had been on, maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks in a row. And then all of a sudden they said, yeah, and you only have to work 10 days a month. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, what? I don't have to work 10 days a month, because at that moment, all I wanted to do was be a better mom. But I couldn't not work because I'm a single mom. Not working wasn't an option. And so I'm like, all right, this fire department thing, 10 days, that's all I have to work. I'll think about all the time I would have off to be with my kids to make sure that I'm in their lives. And I've just always felt like I had some more building to do with them because I had missed so much just focusing on me. So that's how I got to be in the fire department. I took the test. I think 2,000 people tested. There's the first test that you got to go. We actually had to do it in the convention center because there were so many of us. After that test, they ranked us, and I ranked pretty high because me and testing, me and books, me and knowledge, we're like that. So passing a test is never a problem for me. And so I ended up pretty high on that list. And I remember there was another guy at the radio station. He was so pissed because I got over him because he was military. You got extra points for being in the military. You got extra points for living in certain zip codes once you took that test, because that was the whole point, the recruitment in the Black communities. And so he was mad because he just knew, how did you get better than me? It's like, yeah, because I'm blessed and highly favored. I've always been blessed and highly favored. Even when I didn't say that out loud, I was, because my mom and dad were praying for me. My family was praying for me. So I've always been under the umbrella of prayerful people in my life. And it's brought me here. So, I would just look at him, man, I don't know why you didn't make it. But anyways, that's how I made it on the fire department. And it was a great job to get. But honestly, I liked it because of all the time that I didn't have to work. And whenever you have a job that you like, the thing that you like the most is when you're not working, it's probably not the job for you. Anyways, I lasted a long time. I came on the fire department the year of 9/11. As a matter of fact, um, we were sitting in our the rookies were sitting in our the recruits, we weren't rookies yet, the recruits were sitting in, our classroom, just waiting for the chiefs to come and start class that day. They're late. They're never late. Fire department, we're paramilitary. If you're 15 minutes early, you're late. You better be there 30 minutes early if you plan on being on time. So when they didn't come in the room, we were all just kind of looking at each other like, what's going on? What's going on? And our chief of training comes in and he tells us that a plane just flew into one of the twin towers. And we looked at each other like, what? So they rolled a TV in so we could, of course, watch the news that day. And then that's when the second plane went in. And so we weren't sure if it was a replay, but then we realized that no, this is real live. This was the second tower. And that day, and I kid you not, the day that the day of 9/11, our lesson plan for the day was high-rise operations. And so as we watched that day of us firefighters having to be the ones that go up the stairs while everyone's coming down, we lost a few people in my class after that day. We were on high alert because of the Mall of America, so none of us could go home. We all had to stay at work. The whole fire department. It's just how it happened that day. But that's just a side note. But being on the fire department is really where I saw it all. Not things that anyone should have to see. And as a matter of fact, when we were in rookie school, we were always told, don't talk about this kind of stuff with your family. If you see something going on, don't talk to your family about it. Figure out a way to get it out at work and then move on. But when you're in an industry that's so driven by male testosterone, like the guys would come back from a fire and they'd be just all happy. Oh, he has this great fire. But I only saw the people across the street who just lost all their stuff. Like, what are they going to do? Those are the things that I've picked up through my job. I've had to pull jumpers out of the river. I've had to cut people down from their ceilings because they hung themselves. These are the kinds of things that I saw. And these were all, in the city. Like these were city people where I learned that homelessness had nothing to do with desire or ability. It's mental most of the time. People are homeless because they need some help working through some shit in their heads and they don't know how to do it. I'm telling you. Let me take a breath. I can't hear the music, but I know it's going. In my head, I hear it. Let's take a break. How's everybody doing out there? Whoo! How you doing? Tell me how you doing. Let's see. Yes. I was scared they was gonna send you to New York to help. Yeah, I remember that, Resh. I'm so glad they didn't. My chief did go to New York after 9/11 happened. He did go. Because he was one of those chiefs who were known nationally. So he went to New York after 9/11 and helped as much as he could. And they did send quite a few. I mean, I feel like a lot of times during my time with the fire department, we went to a lot of different places and helped. Katrina, we did a lot. We helped a lot, and especially the Black Firefighters Association, which is how I met Vader. I don't know if I said that before, but all right, everybody's doing great. All right, enjoy my breath. Thank you, spiritual thought leader. I tell you. Oh, Royal Confessions is in the house. Oh my goodness. Welcome, Royal. Let me go through this list here and see who I'm missing, just so we can take a little break, because I'm getting a little bit emotional. So before we move on to actually talking about Bootstraps, I think I need to take a little break. Thank you, Royal Confessions. I am so happy that you are here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I appreciate your support. I really do. One of the things I wanted to make sure that we talked about today was Dr. Date. Oh, look at that. And as soon as I wanted to talk about it, there it is. Oh, an SK8843. It's so nice to see you in the house. Thank you for coming. But Dr. Date Priest, who I've said is just amazing. She's an amazing person. I just love her, but she is getting ready to have an anniversary and she's celebrating her 1 year of streaming. And she's not celebrating herself on her anniversary because that's the kind of woman she is. She's not celebrating herself. She's celebrating all the women of Twitch, who, by the way, there are a lot of you that are on this stream who have supported me. And believe you me, I've been a nominating fool. So I hope that you guys have too. Yes, spiritual thought leader. Dr. Dady is a gift from God. She is amazing. So please click on that link so that you can support and nominate someone who's really affected you during your time here, because Twitch is a community. That's what I love about this. I started podcasting last year and it's a lot different. Like there are no one-on-one conversations with people who are listening to you on your chat. There's no video. It's just, sound and sound only, a lot of editing. I, wanted to have everything right. You got to find a host. So I did Buzzsprouts and then you got to pay them all the time too. And I probably still at some point will take what I'm doing here on Twitch and convert it to a regular podcast, but I don't even know if that's necessary. I just have loved getting to know the Twitch community, and it is real. It is strong. I just appreciate it. And so make sure that you are following spiritual thought leader, Dr. Dady Priest, the Rebel Inc. Still don't know if Crazy Town made it in the building, but please follow all these great people. My daughter, It's Me Rush, is going to start putting the names in so you can have a link directly to them. But please go follow these people. They deserve your support, and they are worthy of your support because they're doing great things. Great things. Okay. So we think back to the Minneapolis Fire Department. It's really where all of the passion for inequality was solidified in my spirit. And I started this project called Bootstraps while I was there. If you went back and looked at my introduction podcast and you saw the trailer that I put together, and that's kind of, the culmination of my passion, like seeing the inequality, in my community with people who look like me. What were the factors that contribute to that inequality? What is it that we really need to hone in on? Because we can have conversations forever about what to do, but then actually doing it, what do we do? So I ended up going after my son graduated from high school. I tried to figure out what it is that I wanted to do. Like I was a mom since 18 years old. That's all I did. I raised my kids. And so when it was time for him to leave the house, I was like, okay, now I got to think about what my passion is. What do I want to do? And so I have a cousin that lives in Miami. She said, come on down here, Twana. If you want to be in movies, I will do it for you. She worked for Screen Actors Guild. And, one of the things that stood out when I was a kid is my cousins and I would always get together and we put on shows and we sing and we act. And so I thought that was where my passion was. I wanted to be a star. And so I went down to Miami. My cousin said, come on down, I'll take care of you, girl. So I went down to Miami. And the very first project that I went to, I was just going to be an extra, let me just be an extra. Again, once you get your foot in the door, then you can just fling that thing open, right? So I went, sat there, wanted to be an extra. And they're like, okay, great. And then the one day that I did as an extra, what do you do the next day? So that's when I learned that, I don't know if you guys ever pay attention to movies, but you might see the same extra in a lot of different scenes because they literally come up to the set in with their little suitcase with wigs, hats, different looks, so they can look different. They're the same extra, but they look different in all the scenes in the movies. And so I learned that. I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. So then I went and bought a wig, because I've been natural for a long time. My look is unique. I was natural in 19, whenever that was. I went down to Florida. Marisha, you probably know what year that was more than me, but I was natural even then. And so I had a very unique look. So I got wigs and different clothes. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this extra thing because I want to be a star. And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to make my way up. But then I realized that I liked being behind the scenes more than I like being in front of the scene. I'm gonna be honest with you. I started learning what was going on that set, and I just got so intrigued that by the time I ended that assignment, I'll call it an assignment, as an extra, I had made it on as a production assistant. I'm like, hey, I want to be here. I know I'm not going to get paid. What can I do? So I became a production assistant, and it was my job from then on to bring more extras. So there were, scenes that we had to be in a restaurant, different places. We need a lot of extras. We need a few extras. So it was my job to get extras for the rest of that movie. And so I absolutely loved being a production assistant. But the it ended, and I had to move on to the next gig. But because I had an awesome cousin who had all the inside tea, I knew exactly where to go the next time. So I went to my next job, just expecting to be an extra again. Didn't expect anything more. But because I have my cousin in my back pocket, I really can do anything. She's like, whatever they want you to do, I'm going to help you through it. So have an open mind. So the next one I went to, just to be an extra, I walked out of there being a line producer, went in to be an extra, walked out as a line producer. And I called my cousin, her name's Coco. I'm like, Coco, I have absolutely no idea what it means to be a line producer. What is that? She's like, girl, take that job and come on home. I will tell you what you got to do. So that's what she did. She hooked me up. I learned what it meant to be a line producer, which is just my jam. So just real quick, a line producer, if you ever see that and scrolling in a film, we have to take that script and go line by line and write down and identify everything that film needs. So if you have a script and the first line says, Mary Jane was sitting in the park waiting for John, sipping a cup of coffee and reading a newspaper. So now I've identified that I have Mary Jane, who is an actor. I have John, because eventually John's going to come. So there are two characters, Mary Jane and John. So those are the two characters from that line. And then I also know she's sitting on a park bench. So that's the location. We know the location is a park bench. She's reading a newspaper, sipping on coffee. So now those are props. I need to get a newspaper and a coffee. And then Mary Jane has to be dressed in something. So now I have to identify that, all right, whoever the costume designer is going to have to make sure that Mary Jane looks the same every day because no matter how often or how long we have to shoot that scene, Mary Jane has to look the same every day. So those are the things that a line producer does. We go line by line, identify characters, identify location, props, whatever you need for every line in the script. So we pretty much blueprint and map out what happens in a film. And so that was my job the very first time, and that became something that I was so comfortable with that I was hired as a producer for another film. And we're talking about real films. I mean, you could Google my name, and I have IMDb credits. I really appreciate that. But that also helped me to understand, I can take Bootstraps, I can take this passion about inequality, and I can turn it into a documentary, because documentaries are my passion. And so that's how this all started. And this is a long story just to get back to why this podcast matters to me. But again, not just to talk about it, right? I don't want to just talk about it anymore. I want to be about it. So that's it. I feel like that was a lot, though. I need to hydrate again. How y'all doing out there? I just got this Yeti mug from my job. This is my 9-to-5 Premium. Just showed up at my door one day. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, so let's talk about bootstraps. Let's talk about these factors that contribute to inequality in this country, the things that we just continue to overlook, allow. I don't want to say that we are walking through our lives with blinders on, but sometimes it does feel that way. Me personally, I feel like I've walked through a lot of my life with blinders on, seeing things like you can see what's right in front of you when you have your blinders on. And it's not like you're not seeing anything, right? But once you take those blinders off and you can see in the periphery, you can, oh, wait a minute. It makes you want to turn your head. Like, oh, let me look and see what's going on over there. So it gives you a new perspective once those blinders come off. And it's not that you're not seeing. These are the conversations that I say to myself because I'm trying to uplift myself while I'm going through all these things in my head, right? It's not like I'm not seeing. It's not like I didn't see. It's just that your perspective changes when you take that blinder off, right? Right now, the national conversation is being controlled by privileged people who seem to be stuck about talking about rich and middle class families. That's our focus, right? American citizens living in poverty are struggling to gain attention and respect in a capitalistic society that economically thrives off of their sweat and tears, right? And they're left to just lift them up, lift yourself up by your bootstraps. That's how it always is. You got nothing. We gave you nothing. Take that nothing and turn it into something because this is America, right? Living life with blinders on, no longer an excuse to not acknowledge the truth. We all need to recognize that capitalism is not under attack, people. We're not saying that capitalism is bad, but rather the democratic systems that contribute to its inequality and the collateral damage that it causes, right? Greed is what it is, not capitalism. Capitalism just allows us to be greedy because that's the way it's set up, right? It is time to do more than just talk about poor people. Let's connect the dots between the runaway upper class and the plight of the lower. We're going to dig deep into impressions that our collective society learns about our poor and the stereotypes that we continue to hang on to, right? We all have them. Are they poor because they're lazy, right? Isn't this what we think? They don't have nothing because they don't work hard. Or, as we learn in Sociology 101, right? The system is designed to keep a certain portions of our citizens behind the rest of us. That's how everybody with a lot of money gets to keep more of their money. If they make sure that there are plenty of us down here, that we don't have to pay them to do the work that's making them rich, right? There are a record number of Americans living and their children living in poverty right now. The job that I had before, the one that I have now, was with a regional food bank, another place that has just solidified the passion that I have. I worked at a food bank. And to see that there are people who actually have to decide between paying for electricity, paying for medicine, or eating tomorrow. These are decisions that Americans are making every single day. And we're just like this. Yeah, I mean, they're over there, but we're just seeing what we need. My folks is good, and I'm all good. Right. There are many factors that contribute to, as many people who are living in poverty right now. But what are the systemic reasons behind them? Right? Systems. We have our ways of keeping our poor all grouped together. So they're out of sight, out of mind, upper middle class people. We never have to see them unless we're going to a basketball game downtown, and then we can see, we probably see them then. From the homeless to the working poor, we're going to delve into their lives, learn about them, not just talk about them. The film Bootstraps is going to really explore the institutions that systematically work to keep some more Americans poor. We're going to ask tough questions about why these obstacles still exist and then explore the reality of eradicating poverty as we know it. How many of you believe that we don't need poverty? No one needs to be poor in this country. In this country. We're just talking about America, right? Let's talk about eradicating poverty. How do we do that? What does it look like? Like real action steps. All right, so let's get into education. I have lots of family members who are educators between here, Chicago. Like my family is full of educators. A quality post-secondary education is an essential value of Americans being well off in this country. You got to have a college education. If you are in the United States and you're making over $250,000 a year, then you have that degree, right? A substantial percentage of those that have a master's or a doctorate they're making over $250,000 a year. That number used to sound like a lot to me. I'm going to be honest with you. $250,000 a year. Do you know what I could do with that? But really, you need that now. If you have kids and a family and you just want to be able to make sure that they can go to school and have their own better lives, you need to be making that much money. But regardless of our status, the amount of people who actually attend college is declining. And that's primarily due to the rising cost of an advanced education. Listen, the statistics that I had for Bootstraps were really old, 2010, but I did do a little bit of research for this show. And the average yearly cost for an education just at a public college right now is over $27,000. $27,000 a year. And if you are considered poor in this country, living in poverty, you're not even making that much money a year. So how are you going to add that to what you're doing in your daily life to be able to get an education to pull you up out of that situation? Without grants, without scholarships, it ain't happening. Right? And those statistics deal with Americans that actually make the grade to enter college on a level that will guarantee their success. We already know our elementary and secondary educational systems are abysmal in this country, right? Like, educational achievement in poor communities is nowhere near national or ethical expectations. And school districts across this country are nowhere near finding the solution to the problems. They keep teaching this to this test, right? I've had this conversation with my cousin. She's going to come on in a couple weeks, really going to dig into it. But for as long as they've been keeping the statistics, 1992, I believe is when they started keeping the statistics for testing scores, there has not been any movement. Testing has not gotten any better. The scores aren't any better. Our kids are no more prepared to go to college than they have been ever. But to me, that just goes to show you that our education system is not designed to get our kids to the next level. That's not what it's for. Not the public school system anyway. But are we asking the people who would know the answers to these questions? Most of us believe the answers are simple. But if they were, would we still need to have this conversation? Right? So let's plan on talking about these issues with people directly affected. Right? What do poor children think about their environments? How does it affect them? What do they need in their life to bring hope of a successful future? We already know they're affected because of the behaviors that they bring into school. What do poor parents need to make? What do they need to make life easier for their kids, for themselves? Like, it's one thing to have a passion for kids, but if you disconnect the parents from that passion, then what are you doing? We have to think of the whole family, not just the kids, because I believe the children are our future. That's where my passion lies. But I also know that we can't forget the parents. We can't forget the grandparents and the aunties and the uncles. It's a village. It's a village, right? All right. I'm going to hydrate before we move on to the next one. Oh, man. I tell you, I didn't know what the word was until STL taught me it was shondo. But this is in my shondo. This is the passion that I have. So another thing that I feel like affects our ability to find our way back to our communities that are disconnected is incarceration. As I mentioned earlier, my father has been incarcerated. He didn't get a record, so it didn't follow him around, but I have plenty of family members who have who have records, and we see the struggle. We see the struggle that they have every day just to make it back into society. And for poor children who don't make the grade to get into college, if they don't jump high enough, if they're not angry enough or run fast enough to get that athletic scholarship, trouble is usually the next option. Right? Without quality after school programs and our sheer lack of understanding of what's needed, incarceration is almost inevitable for a pretty good percentage of our urban poor. With a national high school dropout rate hovering around 25%, Black and Hispanic men are more likely to go to prison than they are to go to college. And we need them in college. We don't need them in prison, right? Once someone's information is recorded in the criminal Department of Justice system, the likelihood of that young Black man or woman ever making it out successfully is shockingly low. We know this. Entering into what sociology professors teach as the cycle of deviance, the system is hard to escape. It's hard. We know what a cycle is. I mean, unless you got that off ramp somewhere that someone's putting up there, that pipeline, unless you get in that pipeline to someone so they can get out of that cycle, it's hard. And it's hard. Once it's going fast, it's hard to get them out of that. And this is what they teach us in school, which is why I think, by the way, just a little side note, we have this big attack on education, like it's a liberal thing to want to teach people about how our society works. If we don't know how it works, how can we make any changes? And obviously the people that we're like voting in to make these changes, they ain't really want to change nothing. They just want to get in there for whatever their reason is. We know it's not to change anything though, right? Excuse me. A purpose is served through our incarcerated society, unfortunately. People who are not white are disproportionately represented in our prison system. And we want to dissect that cycle of deviance. We're going to probe into what poor Americans think about going to jail, what effects having a record has on the rest of their lives, and what people who live in poor communities want to see changed and challenged in our criminal justice system. So, my kids are both still in Minneapolis. They both still live there. I left. I was tired of the cold and the snow. I just didn't want it anymore. But Minneapolis is a microcosm of all of the issues that are wrong in this country. And they call themselves the Minneapolis, right? They are a small New York, a much, much smaller New York. But you will find Lao communities, Somalian communities, Ethiopian communities, Eritrea communities. There are so many different communities in Minneapolis. That's why we call it Minneapolis. But they're all right there in the city. Like you're not going to find them in White Bear Lake. Not really, right? So we've got this big heart, Minnesota Nice and all that, but they still keep us all kind of pressure cooked in the city right there. So it's really a microcosm of everything that's wrong, I feel like, in this country. And so that's why when I thought about this project, Minneapolis was really tough on my brain. But these are issues that happen in all cities, in Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, Miami, like everywhere. These are issues that need to be addressed. And I think that we have to start locally, right? So even when we think about economics, finding employment after you've been incarcerated is another near impossibility, right? An immovable barrier to finding your way out of poverty. There are so many other aspects to the job market that contribute to poverty, most of which involve more systems. There are always systems, right? Minimum wage laws. At least we're kind of moving towards thinking about that a little bit more. But the refusal to create a livable wage still hinder progress in this area as such a simple fix. That is just the beginning, but a step in the right direction. $15 an hour, especially after the last 2 COVID years that we've had, with the way that inflation is skyrocketing, gas. Oh my gosh. I left here in February. Gas was $3.59 a gallon. I came back last week. It's $4.69 a gallon in a month. So can you imagine if you already are only making $15 an hour? You working an hour for a gallon of gas, a gallon of milk, and a loaf of bread. That's all your $15 is going to pay for. So here we are thinking that we're making this big progress by increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And in 2 years, that's wiped out because Americans are now this year have to spend $5,000 more a year than they did last year on gas, on how much more food costs, on so many other things. And if you're already poor, if you're already struggling, if you're already working 2 jobs, things are just not going to get much better for you. People who work hard should be able to live life with dignity. I believe that. If someone works a full schedule, a full-time schedule, you're putting in 8 hours, 40 hours a week, you should make enough money to support your family, right? Particularly if there are two full-time workers in your household, life should not be a struggle. You should be able to buy a home. You should be able to pay your bills, save for your children's education so that they can build for their future. This was absolute for white families in the 50s and 60s who benefited greatly from safety nets and government programs. When they were benefiting, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's make sure that these people get what they need. But then when other people needed these safety nets, all of a sudden it's like, oh, sorry, we can't find the money for that. While I understand that it does not take a rocket scientist to clean an office building, it is still an essential occupation and no less important than keeping the computers in an office operable. Your computer goes down, oh, that's a bad day. You stop getting your trash taken out of your office, oh, that's a smelly day. Like, they're both necessary. They're both necessary. There are no meaningless jobs, or they just would not exist, right? I believe this. I believe this. Who decided what job was any less important than the other one? Like, who makes these decisions? Why does it seem that rich Americans believe that being poor is earned? And why are they not willing to sacrifice a little bit of their extreme wealth to help so many achieve so much more? STL says all the time, we got these people just flying into space just because they can. But we have people who just have no idea how they're going to eat tomorrow in this country. I just don't understand. It just should not be happening. No matter where the national unemployment rate rests in this country, people of color living in urban communities carry a much higher rate. I don't even know what the unemployment rate is right now. I didn't get a chance to research that. We'll research that and have more statistics and better numbers when we are having an episode that's specifically talking about that. But it doesn't matter where the unemployment rate is. It doesn't matter where it goes from month to month. Black people and brown people, the unemployment rate is always substantially higher than the national average. Why? What barriers do low-wage earners face? What differences would a couple of dollars make? When we begin to demand from job creators that they begin to pay better wages and salaries. These are just all of the things that this show is going to get into. It's so much. I'm covering so much today. I know. But we're just skimming the surface. One of the other things that we're going to talk about, home and business ownership. I recently became a real estate agent. It took me a long time to finish and to actually become a realtor. I am a realtor. I'm not doing much in the area of real estate right now, but at least I got my license. But anyways, home and business ownership. Excuse me. Community ownership is another major issue in poor urban neighborhoods. Without inherited wealth, advanced education, or a good paying job, ownership of any kind just remains a dream, right? The United States has a historically racial standard for home ownership that, maybe until about 10, 20 years ago, people didn't really hear about. And you may even ask people if they know what redlining is. They might not know. But that's how home ownership was taken away. And how they even still use it now to push people into certain communities. And even though this is not supposed to be legal anymore, it's still happening. It's still happening. It's becoming more debatable every day if the American dream is just an illusion or even a nightmare or fantasy for most Black Americans. Buying a home should be a viable option for any working American, right? Home ownership isn't for everyone. Not everyone's going to own a home. I understand this, but it should be an attainable goal. As an American, if you have a job and there are two people making money in your household, you should be able to own a house, buy a house. Owning a home means something. Equity in homes is what allows people to start a business, pay for their kids to go to college, pay for a vacation, or even just have an extra car so you can both be able to go to work without having to rely on each other. Just those little bitty things. But home ownership allows that to be possible, right? The laws and policy platforms from both political parties should be addressing this ever increasing gap in our wealth. And we need to start moving mountains to find permanent solutions, right? Right here, we're going to be the space. We're going to be that space between inequality right here. We're going to take all these ideas and factors and issues, and we're going to figure out how to lay that pipeline into this community of ours that's disconnected from us. These are our disconnected communities because we're over here in our world, in our own little world, blinders on, disconnected from the communities that need us. It's like the first thing we think about when we start making more money or doing better is leaving, and then we don't go back. I remember here, after George Floyd, after all of the protests, after all of the, destruction of the community, and I got a chance to see it when I went back to Minneapolis. I got a chance to see it, but I also see the growth that's happening. But what I do see, that growth is still not reaching down to Black people. I remember there were a couple of people at work who really wanted to understand how I felt. Doesn't happen very often. White people don't tend to want to understand how we feel about anything. But I did have one person ask me, why are they burning down their own businesses? Why are they destroying their own neighborhoods? And I had to just let them know that those are not their neighborhoods. They don't own anything there. They're not allowed to own anything there. They don't own their homes. They don't own their businesses. Like, that's not our community per se. Those are not our businesses. So it's easy. It's easy to look and say, yeah, I remember, because this has happened. I have known people who have tried to open businesses in Minneapolis, in certain neighborhoods in the city of Minneapolis, and they get turned down. But then you've got, and I'm not saying this to be racist or discriminatory or prejudiced, but we have other people that come into our neighborhoods and are able to own businesses. You don't see very many nail salons owned by Black people in the city of Minneapolis, but there are plenty of Black people who can do nails and can own their own business. So these are the things that's like, all right, we look at it, we know it's happening, but we don't do anything about it. Let's talk about politics for a minute. I mean, all that, right? But this is really the last one, y'all. This is like that last little factor, I think, that contributes to inequality in this country, and that's politics. And I don't know why I saved it for last when I was thinking about all of it, because it's really, politics are so important. How well is the political representation of our poor urban communities? How well do we represent them? How involved in the political process are poor Americans? Do they believe that being involved would even make a difference? What's being done by representatives to increase political involvement and representation in our poor communities? Probably not a whole lot. Probably not a whole lot. It all boils down to one thing, though, right? Economics. In our capitalistic society, money equates comfort. The more money you make, the more things you can have, and it makes life enjoyable. It should be unacceptable. It should be unacceptable to have an America where 90% of the wealth is owned by 1% of our population. Do you understand that? If you put a pie and you put 90%, only 1% of America has that wealth. So the rest of us, 99%, made very popular, when Mitt Romney was running for president. That 99% gets to then divvy up the rest, the 10% of the wealth in this country. Like, how is that even possible? Where is the value in that, America? That does not make us the envy of other countries. That makes us the same as other countries. If wealth is concentrated at the top, democracy is smothered. And then what do we really have? So just real quick, China has been in the mix, right? China has seen in the very recent past a huge upswing in their economy, right? However, if you look at the concentration of wealth in their society, it is eerily similar to the United States. It's ironic that we have been like dramatically warned about the danger of becoming a socialistic society. Oh, we can't, socialism. Oh my God, socialism is so bad. But what they're not telling us, what they are not yelling out as loudly, is that we seem to be inching very close to a communist one. I'm gonna leave that there. There's enough wealth in this country to go around. We should all know this. Poverty is not necessary for capitalism to thrive. We should understand this as well. This issue has to be continuously placed in front and center because, excuse me, it is a direct reflection of who we are as a nation inside. This issue has to be continuously placed in front and center. It is a direct reflection of who we are as a nation on the inside. It is our very core. And right here, we're going to be that space in between inequality. We want to be a catalyst for change. We're going to disrupt. It's the first time I use that word today, but believe you me, it's in my shondo. We are disrupting the patterns here, right? Disruption. That's how we got to do it. Wow. All right, y'all. So I've talked a lot, right? I need another. All right. I've talked a lot. I've had a lot to say. I'm going to go back here real quick and just see what I can read in your chat. I hope that you guys have been engaging each other. Didn't necessarily need to come from me, but I hope that you all in the chat have been able to talk about some of the things that I've mentioned and, you know, found that you are on the same page in a lot of ways. So I appreciate you being here. I see that what is that? Mariposa Melanin. Thank you so much for joining. Latoya, Charisse. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for being here. So much. I appreciate you. Booms 77. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And remember, just a little side note again. We are supporting Dr. Dady Priest and her year in these Twitch streets. It is her anniversary. And she is celebrating by celebrating all of us Twitch women. And I just think that is so amazing. So thank you so much, Dr. Dady Priest, for sharing your day with all of us. I'm sorry, I'm just going through some of the responses that you guys had. It's me, Resh. Thank you so much. In America, no one should be poor, especially since that's what we're known for, being rich, or for how easy it is to be rich in America. Greed knows no end. Yes, Mariposa Melanin. I'm going to figure out how to do this a little bit better as we go along. I have a really nice setup here, but it's really still isn't set up to be, I don't know. I have to do a little bit of changing around here this week, but I am pretty much done with what I have to say today. Ending is always so hard for me. What do I do? What do I do? I'm trying to come up with a nice little exit reel like STL has and other people have. But right now, I just end my show by saying goodbye. But I want to just make sure, does anyone have any questions right now? Do you want to, do you want me to kind of extend the conversation with a question? Tell me what you want to do right now. In space equality. Yes, STL. We are the space between equality right here. Just do you, sis. Thank you so much. Absolutely marvelous. I just appreciate you guys being here. I've not had a place, even when I did the podcast for, you know, Buzzsprouts, whatever, it was really hard to get the passion, you know, in there because no one can really see you. It's, you know, you do an interview with someone and then you're just recording it and then you're editing it and uploading it. Like, it's hard to bring how I really feel about this issue through your typical podcast. So I am so excited that this allows me to share my passion in a way that you can feel it. And hopefully I can feel it from you too. And I just want to make sure that in this space, we're not just talking about inequality, but we're coming up with real, substantial things that we can do. And we're all over this country, right? We're all over the world. So I go to some streams and you've got people from everywhere. But there are two things that I want to do. And this is my own call to action, but I still want to put a call to action out to everyone. But these are the two things that I've been thinking that I'm going to do that can at least make some change in some lives. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start coaching basketball again. In Minneapolis, I coached AAU basketball for many years. I started because my daughter started playing basketball, and since I was at all the games, I started keeping statistics, and I really helped her coach with her team. And then I got my own team and realized how much fun that is. So not only that, but I think that it's important to tell little kids that they can be anything they want to be. And I do want girls. I know Mel Holiday, she does coaching too, but she coaches boys and girls. I don't know how she does that. Boys are just so much more difficult to me. But I want to be able to take my group of girls and bring them through life, because team sports teaches so many things about life, right? How to compromise, how much hard work it takes to be good in what you decide to do, teamwork, being able to rely on other people, but still knowing your role and knowing that everyone plays a part and everyone has their part, but it still comes together to make this really beautiful music. Like, team sports is awesome. But not only that, one of the things that I appreciated about being the coach for my daughter's team when she was growing up is that all of those girls, we had no teenage pregnancy among any of our girls, because we gave them other things to do. We gave them things to look forward to. And so I love coaching and team sports and what that means. And I think that that's a good way for me to be able to work with young Black girls and teach them how to kind of navigate their way through life that way. And then go to college, because that's what I want. I want them to go to college. Use your sport, use your skill, use your abilities to go to college. If you can make it, if you can turn that passion into WNBA or coaching in the like whatever you can make that passion turn into, I'm all for it. But for me, I want them to be able to go to college and get an education and get their degree. So that's kind of my goal with them, just kind of taking a few girls and making that life for them possible. So that's one way. The other thing that I've done, I don't live in Phoenix here. I live in the East, like in the East Valley in a suburb. But one of the things that I feel very strongly about is if we want to see changes in policing, we have to change the way police are hired and what they do. One of the things as I talked about in Minneapolis, there was a lawsuit that kind of made the fire department dig deeper into the communities that they serve first, right? But one of the things, even though you got extra points for being in the city, you could leave the city after so much time, right? And I think that's the same thing that they do with police. What I feel, if we can have some kind of a meeting of the minds, where if you're a precinct, and listen, in the suburbs, I guess they can do whatever they want to do, but if you're in a city, like if I say in Minneapolis, if you're on the north side, if you're in a precinct on the north side of Minneapolis, then you should live on the north side of Minneapolis. That precinct should have 75%, let's say. And I think this is a number that can be adjusted, right? It can be adjusted. But if you live in a community where we've seen issues of police brutality, then you should have at least 75% of the people who serve in that precinct live in that neighborhood, because you're going to care about that neighborhood. Your neighbors are going to know who you are. If you see my son do something wrong, you know where to bring him. You're not going to put him on the ground and put your knee in his neck, because that's all you know how to do with these people. Right? Because that's what they think, that these people, they're coming from other neighborhoods into our neighborhoods to deal with these people and their problems. So once you make that precinct our people and our problem, I think that's going to alleviate many, many issues of policing that we have in our communities. Now, there's a way to do that, and I'm thinking about it. This is the one thing that's circling in my head over and over and over again. How do I? Where do I begin? Who do I go to? Is it a city council person? Is it the police president? Who do you go to say, listen, why haven't you thought of this? And if you have thought of it and you haven't done it, explain why. At least have a reason. But I just believe in my shondo that if we have these communities where we have these issues, police should live there. That should be their home. It should be their community. They should want to live there. They should be passionate about policing there. I believe this to my core. You won't be scared to work in your neighborhood. Exactly. I just believe it. And so that's the second thing that my mind, where I'm going, the movement that I want to make, however that looks, police need to live in their communities. So anyways, that's my call to action. And I want you to think about your call to action. It can be small. It could just be one little thing. It doesn't have to be earth shattering or change the world big, right? But we got to do something. We're at the point where we don't need any more conversations. We don't need any more marching. We don't need any more asking. No more shock when we see time and time again that our lives don't matter. We're done with that. I believe that we are at a time and in a place where we must stop and take a deep look into where we are and how we got here. History is important. It's time to challenge ourselves and think deeply about why we accept inequality. Why is it so easy for us to accept that it's totally okay that one person has billions of dollars he will never be able to spend in his lifetime? At the same time, we accept that he doesn't pay the people who work for him the salary that would allow them to live a better life with dignity, not to have to rely on food stamps to feed their family or have to work another job just to make ends meet. Yes, we're talking about Jeff Bezos. And I love Amazon, but he needs to make some changes. Why do we think that it's okay for our public education system to clearly underperform for our children and not do more to improve our schools? What is your answer? Is your answer because some of us just don't deserve better? We don't want better? Right here, we're going to take you to a place of understanding that we are all basically the same. If you feel like you deserve everything, then we should feel that for everyone else. So let's go. What is one thing that you can do? Just one thing that you can do. And if you're already doing that one thing, grab a friend by the hand and take them with you to do that thing. And hey, if you're already have a group of friends that are getting together, making a difference in our disconnected communities, then please whisper me. I want you right here on this show talking with me, right? All right. I have managed to talk a really long time. I'm going to let y'all get to your Saturday. I appreciate you so much. Kim Possible's in the house. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you've been able to enjoy the show. Please support me and my daughter. We have this podcast that we actually started before I decide to do this one on Twitch. And this is all her idea. It's me, Rush, is my daughter, in case you haven't figured that out. We do a podcast on Sundays called I'm Not Your Little Friend. And it's about Black mother-daughter relationships. You know, I lost my mom several years ago, and there are so many conversations I wish that I had had with her. And so when It's Me, Rush came to me and was like, Mom, let's do this mother-daughter podcast, I was like, that's awesome, because there are probably many conversations that we haven't had either that we need to have. And then we need to make it so that it's second nature. So that vulnerability muscle is in shape when my granddaughter grows up, so we can have these conversations with her too. So hopefully you guys go and support our mother-daughter podcast about Black mother-daughters. Again, That's our voice. But I appreciate everyone coming. The Rebel Inc., I love you. I love you. Kim Possible, I love you. Spiritual thought leader, my pastor. Oh my goodness. God just put you in my life at the exact time that He needed you to be here. And I thank you so much and appreciate you. It's me, Rush. Thank you so much for helping. I see that you've been very active here and I appreciate you. Mariposa Melanin, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I really do hope that you enjoyed yourself. Who else am I missing? All right, listen, if I missed you, I won't miss you next time. I promise. I'm going to get better. But thank you guys. I appreciate your support and we'll see you next week. Oh, and then hopefully tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye. All right, now, if you're on YouTube and you're still seeing me poke around, that's because I haven't quite figured out how to get it done. But I'm going to say goodbye to y'all too. Goodbye, YouTube.